Chapter 21. We're going to go through these, and you'll see as we go on, they get each chapter gets a little bit thicker as we go along because there's more details to it. So I'm not going to try to cover every detail. The idea is to give you the gist of it, so then you can go in and search these out. And here's really what we want you to do: is not just read it, but actually look at it and say, okay, look at your life, look at how the enemy is attacked. Start to spot these things. Look in the scriptures. You'll see stories in the Bible that illustrate these principles. And then you will find in everyday life illustrations. But you want to be able to start spotting them. It's not a matter of just reading something. The point is to recognize the principles well enough so that you can spot them in everyday life, right? Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. So, chapter 21, the principle of surprise. Now, we've already talked about this a little bit when we talked about a raid, of how you can actually surprise the enemy. And here's one of the things that the other books I was telling you about, God at War, they mention this a little bit, and it's good stuff in them. But what you have to realize first and foremost, the best thing that the devil has had in his favor is some of the PR that he's got going for him, because what it is the church has made him, just a little bit smaller than God. And that ain't nothing like what he is, all right? And so we need to realize he's not near as powerful. He's not near as knowing as everybody thinks he is, right? Just to give you an example, and I always use this example, but it's a good one, just to show you how much the devil doesn't know, is that whenever Jesus was born, 3 wise men, Magi from the east, could actually find him, and the devil couldn't. Now think about that. As a matter of fact, the devil couldn't find him so much that the devil worked through Herod to try to kill him, didn't know who he was or where he was, so Herod had to kill all children 2 years and under, hoping he would get him. So the devil couldn't even see him. The devil couldn't even spot him and couldn't get to him. And yet 3 wise men went right to him. Now you would think the devil would just follow them. But he ain't that. He's not as smart as you have been led to believe he is. And so there's a lot of things. There's things he doesn't know. And there's all kinds of aspects in that. That's why it is the church's privilege to show forth the manifold wisdom of God. Amen. Satan is still a fallen angel, and he still doesn't know, and we are still supposed to be showing the wisdom of God to principalities, powers, all these spirit beings, because they don't know these things. And yet they've had good PR in the sense they try to tell everybody how big they are, how tough they are, how powerful they are, and most of it is a smokescreen. And so you have to read. That's why we read earlier in Isaiah, they said they're going to look at him and say, is this is what shook the world? This is what everybody was afraid of? And we're going to realize we should have never been afraid of him in the first place, right? So the definition of the principle of surprise: strike the enemy at a time and or place and in a manner for which he is unprepared. It's that simple. In the beginning, almost anything you do will surprise him because he's used to Christians doing nothing. And so you can walk past sick people, he's not surprised. What surprises him is when all of a sudden you stop and reach out. That surprises him. He's not used to that. He's getting more used to it because more Christians are doing it. But you have to do it. He watches you. Jesus we know. Paul we know. Who are you? See, we say all the time, you need to develop a reputation in hell. Right? That they know who you are. And the good thing is when they know who you are, they'll stop messing with you quite as much. Now in some areas, what it is I think it's Joyce Meyer says, higher level, higher level, bigger devil? Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. But it doesn't matter how big they get, we're still bigger. Amen? It's like Wigglesworth said, I'm this what I am on the outside, but I'm 1,000 times bigger on the inside. And that's what people need to realize. Amen? We're 1,000 times bigger than the biggest devil on the inside. Amen. We just need to recognize who we are. All right? So, second, accomplish your purpose before your enemy can react effectively. Get it done. Don't draw it out. If you go in, I remember Kenneth Hagin used to say, if you go in to cast a devil out and you don't go in to get it done, and he used to say, you might have to go in. If you go in and you think it's going to take all day, take a sack lunch. Because if you believe it's going to take all day, it is going to take all day. If you go in understanding, no, this ain't going to take no time at all, because we are that much more powerful. It doesn't take near that much time. Right? Don't allow the devil to do manifestations on us. So he'll try to do shows. He'll try to do stuff. First, he'll try to act big and scary. And then when you back him down from that, he'll start whimpering and crying and try to bring out sympathy to keep you from casting him out. All these things. He tries all these different tactics. Just stay focused. Do your job. Set the person free. Don't worry about the devil. Set the person free. If you set the person free, the devil will have to go. Right? Don't focus on the devil. The devil is he's a defeated foe. Right? We don't focus on him. We focus on the job at hand. Kick him out. Real simple. So, General George S. Patton Jr. says, never attack where the enemy expects you to. So that's a good plan of attack right there. Speed and deception are critical elements of victory. Now, a lot of people don't like the word deception, but it is the idea of not letting the enemy know what you're going to do and making him think you're going to do something else in another area so you can attack there. It's not using deceit or deception or lies or anything like that. We're not talking about that. Remember, we have to live righteous, holy lives in every aspect, even in dealing with the devil. So, if the enemy knows what you're going to do and when and where you're going to do it, then he has the advantage because he has your plans, but you don't have his necessarily. If you're going to hold an important meeting, he will cause other meetings or events to conflict with yours, right? And many times that's what it has been amazing the times we've gone into cities and we'd have a DHT scheduled for months in advance. And within about 2 to 3 to 4 weeks just before we come in, all of a sudden all these other events start popping up. And it starts dissipating the number of people who have to say, oh, do I do this? Or people start having to say, well, I got to go to my own church because my own church is putting this thing on. We've seen it over and over again. And so look at what is going on first and then see what happens around that, right? So he will try to dissipate your forces and make sure people don't hear what they need to hear. If you're going to talk to a person a second time about their salvation, he may try to kill them before your planned meeting, or he may reinforce wrong beliefs through others just before your meeting, right? Or something else he will throw up. These are just little things to start to notice. As you hear about these, you can probably remember back and you'll start thinking, I remember that. Yeah, he will also try to distract while you're gone if you go to a meeting. I know in ourself, we were somewhere, I don't remember where it was now, but we lived actually up in the Sherman area. We'd gone on a trip and we get a call from our house, which is not what you're expecting, is to get a call from your own home phone number. And it was one of our children saying, hey, just letting you know, this water thing, the water heater, has just not exploded, but completely leaked out, and it's all over, and the water's the water's going, and it's flooding the house, and we're in the middle of a meeting. And now your mind is, what? We got a flooded house, and you start thinking, okay, what was flooded? Strange thing is that the water was flooding, and even where we are now, I have a room for an office, and if you go in there now, actually, right now it's not, but if you'd have been there last week, you'd see it. But a lot of times when I'm going through my books, every day when I leave here, I take a tub of books or back or forth. I'm taking some home and bringing some back and trading them out and working through things. And so when I get home, a lot of times I'll take them out of the tubs and they'll be on the floor. And so I'll have them kind of set in the floor where then I can actually sit in the floor and go through them if I need to, or near my desk or something. And so a lot of times I have books in the floor, and a lot of them are 100-year-old books. I mean, they can be different things. And we were on this trip, and they said, it's flooding the rooms of the house. It ran through and started flooding the rooms. And my first thought was, wait a minute, I got books in the floor in my room. And I didn't want them to get ruined. So I said, well, check my office. And they went and they checked, and they come back and they said, no, the water stopped at your door. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Right? So, but he will do all those kind of things while you're gone, different stuff happening, things just to throw you off, to throw you and to kind of get you off balance. And so you start looking for those things. And then just while I go on a trip, every time I'd go on a trip, I'd get a call from everybody that stayed back home. This has happened, so-and-so got sick, this thing happened. Just attack after attack to try to keep my mind off of being focused on where I was at. And so I could give you many, many examples of that. But he will try to do that, and no doubt many of you probably have those same things. You decided to come here, and last minute, everything tried to stop you from getting here. Everything tried to keep you, well, you can't do it this time. You need to just postpone it. You'll do it later, all kinds of stuff. And then when that didn't work, when you got here, many of you probably got phone calls that said, oh, this is going on, that's going on, and it's trying to distract you. And so you can start to see these principles working as you start to take notice of them. Now, it says here, just to give you an example, the element of surprise, back in, April 21st, 1836, Sam Houston, fighting in the War for Texas independence, actually had been chased by Santa Anna across Texas, and everybody was basically calling him a coward because he wouldn't fight. But he was looking for a particular area where he had the advantage because he was more than twice and almost 3 times outnumbered. So he was looking for an advantageous field to offset the numbers against him. And so finally he ended up in an area of San Jacinto right outside of Houston, and he knew that that was the place to go. And so he had already strung out Santa Anna's troops, and then Santa Anna's army had already split up into 2 different groups to try to rout the Texian army that had been fleeing. And just so you know, the original Texans weren't called Texans, they were called Texians. And so they kept going until he found this place, then he stopped. And Santa Anna had at least about 1,360, probably closer to about 1,400, 1,500 soldiers there. And Sam Houston actually only had 910. And so he was outnumbered at this point, but this was fairly advantageous. And he stopped, and then he turned and attacked, which was quite a surprise because they didn't think he would do that. And when he did, the entire battle, because it was a surprise attack, and the entire battle lasted 18 minutes. Right? And in that time, in 18 minutes, the Mexican army lost 630 killed in 18 minutes. And then there were 730 prisoners. The Texian army, which comprised of 910 910 men, put it that way. Out of that, only 9 were killed, and 30 were wounded. But even the wounding was very minor things. Sam Houston himself was one of the wounded, as a matter of fact. But you can see that the element of surprise is why Sam Houston won. Is because he was not expected. Santa Anna did not expect him. Santa Anna thought he was running scared and never thought he'd have the guts to face him. And whenever you can convince your enemy that you're afraid of him, that's a good time to attack, because they're usually overconfident and they underestimate you. It's always good to be underestimated. Amen? You're always in an advantage if you're underestimated, as long as you're not underestimated in your own mind. Okay? We see that with the Israelites. The Israelites went in the land of promise, and what did they do? They sent in 12 spies, and 10 came back saying what? We are grasshoppers in our eyes to them. They went in, and the reason they were grasshoppers in their enemies' eyes was because they were grasshoppers in their own eyes. But yet God had promised them, and the only 2 that actually entered into the promised land were the 2 that said, we are well able. Let us go in and take the land. And so, as a matter of fact, God called the first 10, said that they had an evil report. And what was an evil report? We can't do it. Now think about that next time you start saying what you can't do. Amen? God calls that an evil report. Now, let's look at the enemy's use of the principle of surprise. Number 1, we've just discussed a couple of ways that the enemy tries to thwart your plans. Let's look at his use of the principle of surprise. Scenario 1, you plan to go to a person's house to talk to them about their, you fill in the blank, their salvation, their healing, their deliverance, whatever, their discipleship, whatever it is. Now, when you arrive, you begin with some small talk. Then, just as you are beginning to get down to kingdom business, the doorbell rings and another person is shown in. The interruption throws you off for a second, but as you recover, you find out that the person is a friend or a relative of the person you're talking to, and that they're a Jehovah's Witness. Now, do you realize the entire dynamic just changed? Why? Because you wasted time. And the enemy is trying to bring in the element of surprise to throw you off guard, okay? To get you off kilter, so to speak. Now you find yourself off balance, trying to fight a war on 2 fronts. The enemy has just used the element or principle of surprise. Usually the new person will try to take the initiative and lead or direct the conversation, either toward their own views of religion or toward a worldly topic. The target person will often tip the scale in their favor by immediately joining in with them in the new topic. Now, what has happened? The enemy has just taken advantage, and he has taken And what has happened now, the Christian has lost the initiative. And the key to winning war is number one, keep the initiative. But if you lose the initiative, then you have to regain the initiative. It's easier to keep it than it is to try to regain it, right? Keep the topic headed in the right direction. Don't get off base. Don't get off topic. Stay on topic. The enemy normally tries to use the principle of surprise to get you off guard just long enough to seize the initiative. It does not have to be a large surprise. It can be the entrance of an added detail, as in the following scenario. You have been witnessing to a coworker at your job. You've discussed a couple of biblical topics without getting too direct. Today, you're tackling the topic of sin. During your examples of various kinds of sin, you mention homosexuality. At that point, the target, the person you are dealing with, tells you that their child, their friend, etc., whatever it is, their loved one, relatives, is quote-unquote gay. The awkwardness of the moment is meant to put you on the defensive, because now you have to decide if you're going to go ahead and say anything or not. It is meant to cause you to begin mentally analyzing the situation about the way you should handle the new information. Do you comment on it, ignore it, etc.? One way to prevent this situation is to prepare for it. This should be done during the training time with your unit. I have there as a life team. And more on this is in section 3. We'll see in just a moment. Now, I can't really go too far into this, but you can get the idea of what the enemy does. He just tries to throw things up. Okay? Another, well, I don't know if I have it here or not. We'll go with the next one here first. Just as you are leaving your house to go to pray for a sick person, your boss calls you to tell you that an important file has been apparently deleted and you may have to work on it, setting you back a week or more. Right? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be that. It could be some other thing, but anything where this is thrown in. The importance of the file will determine how much of your mind is displaced while you minister to the sick. Right? You can be driving somewhere to go pray for the sick, and you can get a phone call. It could be anything, right? It could be a loved one, it could be a friend, it could be a foe. Right? It could be anybody that gets hold of your phone number, and right while you're going to pray for this person, the devil says, quick, find somebody that will call them that has something to complain about. Something negative. Find the most negative person you can find and get them to call them quickly. And then that person will call you and gripe, complain, do something. Or do you hear about this? You hear what they say? I don't know if you heard this. They're talking about you. Do you know that? And now you're wait, who's talking about me? What are they saying? Now you've just been drawn in and you're taken off from your purpose. You need to be focusing on where you're going. Many times when I'm on my way to pray for somebody, I will not answer the phone, especially if I recognize the number. Right? Just letting you know. Okay, so, but it is because you can know certain people. You know certain people that you know as soon as you get on the phone, you know how the conversation is going to go. And you can tell, I'm going to go pray for somebody. I don't need to talk to this person now. Just, it's not being mean. It's just being wise. Jesus tells us to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. So we have to learn to be wise. Now, let's see. Yeah. Often the missing item will be found shortly after you minister. On a lower level, then, meaning that you have ministered now on a lower level than you would have ministered because your mind is distracted. Many of the uses of the principle of surprise can be likened to a sucker punch. The point is not to take you out, just to take your breath away, right? Just to get the wind out of your sails kind of thing. You could be heading toward pray for somebody that it's a very serious case and you'll get a call or now they don't even have to call you, they can text you. And you kind of almost can't avoid seeing that, right? Because we're all Pavlov's dogs now. That means every time it goes bing, we have to look. It's just trained automatically. Somebody else's phone will bing and you're like, what do you got? What's going on? We're just trained that way now. And so sometimes the enemy doesn't even have to call you. He'll just, text you. And they'll tell you, hey, this person I've been praying for, either me or maybe somebody else. Sometimes it'll be even them. This person that they're praying for, they just died. Now you're going to pray for somebody. How do you think that's going to affect you? Not positively, right? Unless you know how to turn that situation around and you get mad. Amen. And you go, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. But see, now you're wise. You know what he's trying to do. He's trying to weaken you. What does that mean? That means he's afraid of what you're fixing to go do. So the enemy knows you're going to have victory. So he's trying to do everything he can to throw roadblocks in front of you, obstacles in front of you. So let that be a sign to say, oh, good, he's worried. I remember T.L. Osborne one time was trying to go into where was he going? Some country. I want to say it was India. It might have been China. Somewhere. And they told him when he got to the border, they said, you can come in, but you can't take that book. And talking about his Bible. And he said, you mean I have to leave the Bible here? Yeah, you can leave it here and you can pick it up on your way back out. And he said, well, why are you worried about the Bible? Well, we don't want that in here. And he said, so you're that afraid of it? And they said, we're not afraid of the Bible, we just don't want it in here. He said, if you weren't afraid of it, if you wasn't afraid of what it could do, you wouldn't have any problem with it coming in here. The reason you don't want it in here is because you're afraid of what it'll do, because you know what it'll do. And they got all flustered and said, okay, you can take it. So, amen? See? So Dr. Summerall had almost an identical situation. But he told him, he said, I can leave the book. What's in the book is in here. And you can't take that. And he still got in, and I don't remember if he got to take his Bible or not, but it wouldn't have mattered. See, we have to get beyond just what we can read. We got to have it in us. Right? So, next, number 2, the enemy's use of the principle of surprise in corporate warfare. The enemy's use of the principle of surprise in corporate warfare is similar to individual warfare. Similar. It is the introduction of a fact or situation that is not necessarily intended to take you out. It is merely intended to divide your attention so that you operate on a lower level of effectiveness. Remember, anytime you are divided, you are less effective. That's why it's important that you focus. Even when you're praying for a line of people, you don't go from person to person to person. Each person there stands on their own. In other words, when you get in front of them, nobody else exists. If you don't focus on them and you're going from one person next, you're dissipating the power that God has put in you, and you will end up having less results in that situation. Now, but it's different. Now watch this. You could stand in front of a crowd of 50,000 people and give one command and have 10,000 people get healed. Right? You say, well, why don't you just stand in front of the 10 and give them command? You could. We've done it. We've done it all over the world in every place we go to. But usually, the bad part is, in a crowd of 50,000, they know you can't get to them, and they're just happy to get any kind of prayer. But whenever you have 10 people stand in front of you, bless God, this is America. I drove all this way. I deserve personal attention. Why? Because you have a consumer mentality. So you think because you come in and put some money in the bucket that this is a transaction. I owe you something. No, I owe you to love you, and I owe you to tell you the truth. That's what I owe you. And you say, I'm saying this before the offering, so you know I don't care either way, right? I'm telling you the truth. But you need to realize that this is not a transaction. You're not paying for anything, okay? Now, understand, as you know me, okay, you know I don't consider myself special in any way. But I will tell you this. If you were trying to pay me for my services, you couldn't afford me. Because my services are worth more than you could pay. Because what is it worth to be able to get somebody free of cancer? It's more than you can pay. Amen? It's everything that Jesus could pay. Amen. So we have to realize you're the same way. Your time is valuable. Your service is valuable. But if you don't see it that way, you won't ever amount to much in the kingdom of God. Boy, you are quiet. Amen. Y'all thinking? I hope you're thinking. All right? Okay. As long as you're thinking, we're good. Okay. Now, watch this. It says, there we go. It is essential that you train using role-playing so that you cannot be surprised. And you should learn to disconnect from earthly things from the time you begin your mission until the operation is over. The disconnect works well until your mind is renewed enough and you are dead enough that things do not upset or offset you. Flexibility is a key attribute in overcoming the principle of surprise. One of the things that is excellent whenever our brother Adam down in Australia, whenever he trains a lot of his disciples and things that he's working with and teaching them how to minister and how to preach, all kinds of distractions go on. And see, up here, we purposely make this up here so there's not a whole lot of distractions. And this over here is part of the television set that we use, and then we use some of this. But for the most part, we try not to have too many things up here that draws your attention off. But so there's really not a lot up here, and since you're looking this way, we're good. But you have to also remember, while you're looking up here, I'm looking out there, right? And so that means while you're watching me, I'm watching you. And some of you don't realize I'm watching you. I can tell by what I watch you do, right? And you don't know what's going on sometimes. But other times, there's things going on. People come in. There's stuff. There's movement. And that's my basic nature. If there's movement, I notice. I mean, if it's like I'm motion censored or something. I don't know what it is. But if there's movement, it's kind of like, what are you doing? And so, you get up, move around, or whatever you do, I see it, right? It doesn't distract me because I've done it enough that I don't get distracted anymore. But what Adam will do whenever some of his guys are preaching is they have folding chairs, they have different things there, and while one of his guys is preaching, he will get at the back of the room and take a plastic bottle, an empty bottle, and just crunch it up. So it makes noise. And a lot of times they're like, hey, and they start looking around because they're distracted. You can't get distracted on these things. And so there's been times he just walk by and tip over a metal chair. Bam! Yeah, guess what? And everybody's like, and even the guy preaching and most of the people watching, same thing. And it is the most amazing thing that you can be teaching about the eternal destinies of human beings. You can be actually teaching the mysteries of God that somebody has never heard before. And you can have one fly come into the room and everybody will be watching it. All over here, and you're teaching how to raise the dead, and they're like, "Is that fly? That's a fly." Like they've never seen a fly before in their life. So, one of the main things that Dr. Caroline Leaf talks about is that how we have been trained to skim, or as we would say, to scan also. That nobody, hardly anybody, thinks deeply on any topic anymore. And you can tell the difference in the books you read, because books are written in a way that you don't have to have deep thought, you just scan. Most of the time you can read the first 2 sentences on a page and tell what the whole page is. And so, but in the old days, and that's the difference between people like Finney, Wesley, Lake, Booth. When those guys wrote something, it impacts. When you read it, there's a depth. And you can look at that and go, these guys knew God. And you don't get a lot of that. Why? Because nobody thinks that deeply anymore. Nobody sits and dwells upon God. Nobody spends time communing with God to that level. Most communing with God is very superficial. God, give me a pay raise. God, give me a better car. God, give me a good vacation. Please, God, let my in-laws not move in with me over the holidays. Think just superficial stuff, all right? Very few people actually take something and think about it. And they don't think through, and that's why there's so many weird, stupid doctrines out there. It's because nobody thinks of they don't realize that doctrine can't be true, because if you followed through to its natural conclusion, you could prove it wasn't true. But nobody thinks that deep. And so that's why you should take things and think deeply on them. Focus. Because also when you do that, you're also engraving those neural pathways in a stronger, deeper way so that you have a better, stronger memory. Right now, honestly, if most people's phones went dead, they couldn't remember anything they wrote that day. And because they just, text it quick and send it out, and it's, they don't even think about it hardly. They just do it real quick. And, honestly, and I got to admit too, if my phone died, it'd be really hard for me to, remember the number to go call somebody, because they're all on, either you just go down and find it and you don't even see the numbers anymore. But the things, and this is one of the problems, you realize that when you text or type, whether a computer, whether it's a phone or a tablet of some sort, it does not have the same effect as you writing something down. Okay? When you write something down, it engraves it in your neural pathways, and you remember it, up to 70% of it. When you type things, it is disconnected and it does not cause the memory. What we are creating in schools that use devices instead of handwriting things, we are creating a bunch of people that by the time they leave the class, they've already forgotten what they read and what they heard. So we are dumbing people down by the way most teaching is being done today. That's why we could use technology, we could use the PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff, and it'd all be good, it would help, but it's much better for you to write it. We try to provide notes and things for you, but you need to write your own notes. So, all right, now, below are a few ways the enemy uses the principle of surprise in a corporate warfare situation. All these are during a typical church service. A power surge causes a large squelch over the PA system. Something happens with the sound. It usually takes upwards of 10 minutes before everyone is again at the same place spiritually that they were before the interruption of the sound. Since most churches are on a time crunch, this can stop more important things from being done later. If the leader of the service is shakeable or soulish or emotionally oriented, it may cause them to abandon their original direction and revert back to a previous message, one that they've given before because they can give it without much thought. And so because they haven't thought through and have not really embodied what they're trying to say. You must become unshakable. The opposite tactic attached to this principle is that all the electricity goes off. We've had that happen even recently. In the other side of the building here, all power just stopped, right? All kinds of things like that going. A person well known to many in the congregation may show up fashionably late. Okay? There is no such thing as fashionably late in church. You're a distraction, right? Possibly a local celebrity or a person of some notoriety, maybe a well-known drug dealer, the mayor, TV news person, somebody else. Maybe they all show up or individually show up. Soon, all those that know who the person is will be telling all those who don't know who they are. You're all of a sudden now not even listening to what's being preached. You're whispering, know who that is? Know who this is? And you start doing all this other stuff and distracting. Some arrive late on purpose because they want to be seen and noticed. Some arrive late so they can sneak in unnoticed. Both are ploys used by the enemy to upset the flow of the service. Everyone in the service must become unshakable. Number 3, an extremely ill person may come into the service with equipment such as oxygen or a wheelchair or a stretcher even. We've had services where people come in stretchers and people act as though they've never seen one before. Or they may be brought in on a stretcher, as it says. If they come in a wheelchair, then the attention will be significantly influenced by the severity of their visual condition. The more unusual they look, the longer it takes to return the service to normal. And then parents have to explain the situation sometimes to their children. What's going on? Because the children say, what is that? Why is it this way? We get it. You must train the congregation to become unshakable. Number 4, a person may manifest a devil. They may begin to scream or make unusual sounds. And because of the sterility of most churches and church services, this usually leads to an awkward moment while the minister tries to figure out what to do, ignore it, cast it out, run out the door, over by the baptistry, something, right? I've seen that before. Somebody come in, we were we were up north somewhere, and the pastor was there and he was talking and about to introduce me, and somebody brought a relative of his into the church in it was a really unusual wheelchair, and it was a really serious physical condition. And as soon as the person came in, he went out the back. He looked up, looked at me, looked back over at them, and then went out the back door. Didn't say a word. I'm kind of like, okay, well, what do we do now? I mean, what's going on? I thought he was actually going around to meet them, but he wasn't. He was going out the back door because he had prayed for them before, and it was an embarrassment to him that they weren't well. And so he left. Now, I will tell you, he was of a ethnic background that takes a lot of, puts a lot of stock in losing face before people. And so I think it had to do because he had a guest speaker and this came in. And later on, whenever I met with him, I went ahead and preached. We had a healing service, prayed for people. And then strange thing was, whenever I started praying for people, those people actually went back out the door, didn't even come down front to get prayer. And then later when I talked with him, he was like, well, how'd the service go? It was good, okay. All right, well, we want to have you back sometime. It's like, are you just ignoring totally the whole situation? And you have to figure out, does he not want to talk about it or what's going on? I never got really an answer out of him why he did it. I asked him about 3 to 4 different times, and he would look at me and then change the subject. So I'm like, okay. Strangely enough, I never got invited back. So anyway. Number 5, the last tactic of the enemy we will discuss is sometimes the most effective. The name Beelzebub, we just talked about this actually, means Lord of the Flies. It is amazing to watch the reaction of children and adults if one fly, or a similar pest, enters a church service. Usually you might as well make a game out of it, reward the person that kills the thing, right? Because nothing else is going to regain the people's attention and keep it until the intruder is dead. Dead, not just gone, because he'll come back. Right? Because people will keep looking for its return or wonder where it is. They must see the thing die a horrible death. Okay? Okay? Yeah. I remember there's been a couple times even here, the fly would come in, and way back when I was in martial arts and stuff, I kind of made a game out of, being able to quick enough to catch them, and I'd catch them and, throw them in water or something. Anyway, and I'd be up here, and it's habit. And I'd be standing here, and the fly would come around, and they're like, trying to preach and kind of like, then you realize you got him. There's nowhere to put him. And you kind of, you just kind of stand there a while, just, okay, and you don't want to just squeeze it. I mean, it's just there. So you kind of hang on to it, and then, as soon as you break, it's kind of like, okay, God bless you. Go ahead, and you try to go off somewhere and kill it or something. And the good thing is I'm left-handed. So if I'm going to do it, it's going to be left-handed. So I can still shake your hand, right, if we need to. You don't want me catching a fly and then killing it and then going, hey, how you doing? It's like, So it's just kind of like, hi, how you doing? And this thing's over here going, zzz, 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 you can hear it. So see, these things you don't learn in Bible school. See, they don't tell you these things in Bible school, okay? Unless you come to ours, we'll talk about these things right here. So, next, the Christian's use of the principle of surprise. The Christian's use of the principle of surprise can take many forms, but the most simple, effective, and direct use is to simply stop randomly, or better yet, every time they see a person with a need and minister. Just stop. Just randomly do it. Walk past them, come back to them. Stop. Don't stop. Send somebody else. You see them, you can send somebody else over. I don't encourage that. I think if you see them, you free them. That's what it should be. But you can just use random surprise in these matters. If the Christian stops every time, the element of surprise may not last long, but the desired effect of setting the captive free is still working. Be sure to stay focused. Don't let a person pull you from the mission or topic. You will be headed, you will not be headed. You're not beheaded. Okay? You may be heading towards somewhere. And as you go across the store to get to somebody else will try to intercept you. Hey, aren't you so-and-so? And they won't even know. It won't even be who they think you are. Hey, aren't you Bill? No, I'm not Bill. Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. You sure look like Bill. You sure you're not Bill? Because you kind of remind me of Bill. And you're like, I'm trying to get to that sick person. And, then the devil's whispering in the sick person's ear, get out of here quick. And you see these people with a walker. They're like, I don't know why I'm in a hurry, but I'm trying to get out of here. And then you got this person talking to you. Okay, that is the enemy coming in to try to get them away from you, right? Or you walk up to a person and say, hi, this is my name, this is what I do, and I'd like to pray for you, or I'm going to pray for you. And right when you start to talk to them, somebody else will walk up. Maybe their friend. So, it could be anybody. It could be somebody. You'd be surprised at the randomness of it. Somebody may come up and ask you a question, thinking you work there or something. But you're about to minister to them, and or their friend will come up and say, excuse me, what are you doing? What are you talking to my friend? Well, if I was talking to you, you'd know. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to them, right? But they'll always try, well, who are you? What church do you go? The person you're going to pray for, they're all for it. Can I pray for you? Yeah, go ahead and pray for you. You start to pray. And well, who are you? What church do you go to? What do you do? It's like, you know what? Shut up and stand there a minute, right? Let me deal with this first. It's kind of like you get two devils at the same time. Say, shut up and come out of them at the same time. Anyway, so you'd be surprised at what the enemy will try to do just to get you off base somewhere and to get you off balance. So now, look at, look at number 2. Now we're going to go to the next. We're going to go back up where we were before. You may employ surprise by starting a discussion with a stranger on one topic, and as soon as they're engaged, switching the conversation to spiritual matters. Jesus did that a lot. Give me something to drink. And then he turned it, right? So a lot of times you can engage on one thing, and the enemy will go, oh, okay, he's just going to ask a question. And then all of a sudden you jump in there with something spiritual. And it'll be just the element of surprise. So the Christian's use, number 2 there, of the principle of surprise in corporate warfare is generally practiced by the minister, having a list of topics and persons for which prayer, intercession, and warfare is to be made. The minister must scramble the order so that the element of surprise is maintained. So you can change these things around, and that also helps keep you many times stirred up. There should be no perceived order in either people or method. Switch from warfare to praise to intercession and from person to person. You don't have to go pray, 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 pray. You can stop. Many times when I'm overseas, you'll see this a lot. When I'm praying for maybe 2,000 people and you got them lying down through the building and they're coming up around and you're praying for them, many times, well, especially like when I was in Ukraine this last time, in the last couple of times, I take my own CD of music I want played. Most of them don't understand English, so the music isn't for them. It's for me because they can understand what's being said. And so I give the guy the CD and I tell him, play this, play song number 1, then go to 5 and then come back. And I try to have them in order, but it doesn't always work. But it's songs for me that help keep me stirred up. Because when you're praying for 2,000 people, you don't want to get robotic and get monotone and calm down. You want to stay stirred up. So I play songs that stir me up, not songs that stir them up. right? I'm not trying to get hype. I'm trying to keep stirred up. And so I put on certain things. And there's be times when I pray for them, and I'll just stop, just step back. Say, hey, you're here for a couple hours. We can hang out. And I'll just stand back and just worship, and just completely focus on God. And then in a moment, all of a sudden, it's like, okay. And now I said, bam, boom, step back over, you, bam, and we just hit that thing, and it's a surprise. And it's the same element of surprise. And so there's reasons for that. You can move into worship. You can move into prayer. You can tell the people pray. You can say, okay, everybody raise your hands and pray. When they raise their hands, they'll close their eyes because they're going to pray. When they do, you walk over to them and say, be healed in Jesus' name. Surprises, right? And it doesn't get their mind involved. Many times, one of the reasons it's hard to get people healed sometimes in lines like this is because their minds are so involved. And you got to get past their soul to get them healed. And many times their minds will engage and they'll start, well, what's going to happen? Or even worse, when you call them up, they're kind of like, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to fall? How am I going to, I want to fall. If I fall like this, and they start thinking. It's like, don't think. Just receive. Just let it hit you, right? If you fall, you fall. Who cares? If you don't fall, don't fall. You don't get healed by falling. And so the main thing is you just minister to the person, but don't give them time to think about it. This is not a thinking thing. So you may desire to break up the service by going from prayer to ministry to the sick. The service leader should maintain eye contact with everyone in the congregation, no closed eye praying. By using hand signals and voice commands, the leader should direct the level or volume, intensity, type, English, tongues, whatever, and the object of prayer. And that's why usually I try to meet with the people before so that I can say, okay, look, if I want the music up, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to take it up, take it down, stop, pause it right there. And we give hand signals so that they know, because a lot of times if there's a lot of noise, meaning a lot of music, or people, then a lot of times they can't hear you. And then you start trying to say, okay, calm down, and they don't get it. So you have to use hand signals to be able to direct that. Now, and you can move from one thing to the next. Now, yes, we are going to take a break. I'm not going to jump into the next one. We're going to take a break, and then we will come back after this.
If you are considering partnering with us and would like to support our mission, please visit jglm.org/partners. Proceeds will go toward the cost of the television broadcast and our mission work around the world.